So it's good to see you all on this beautiful Saturday morning here. It's at the Hermitage, and we have some friends here for the workday. Probably other people might be coming in as we go, but we'll see. It might just be us. And just take a few minutes, maybe a short meditation this morning. Settle in and suggest to the body that it relax. Let go of whatever it might be holding. Invite the mind to relax. To arrive. So for those of you used to longer meditations, that was probably pretty short. For those who are not feeling like settling, that was probably long enough. But this morning we've got people arriving, and I think it's going to be better to keep the meditation short, just a little grounding at the beginning, and talk a bit about Dhamma. So one of the things about this is a work day here at the Hermitage, and usually we come ready to go to dig in and be active, and then it's very helpful to think about mindfulness as we work, especially the kind of work we're going to be doing today outside together. And things like dragging branches and cutting down tree limbs, and one of the most important things is to be mindful and aware of where everybody else is around us. And so it's a very wonderful exercise in being present. And of course, then, there's also whenever we're together in a group, being mindful of how we feel and how things are in ourselves is so valuable and important. And let alone what we say and all of that, but not to put too much pressure on, I have to really be good. I'm at the monastery. Really be careful about what I say, or whatever. I think it's good to relax and really enjoy the time, and trust in our own goodness. Allow ourselves to, just be in the Dhamma. I have lots of fond memories of being at Abhayagiri when I first came to the Dhamma, and even doing things that I really felt I wasn't good at all, didn't like at all. Somehow it had a much more uplifting feeling about it. But it's because of the nature of the community, the keeping sila, first of all, the precepts, and the practice. It felt like I could even work in the kitchen and feel okay. That was definitely not my strong area. So it's nice to remember that we come together, especially to make an offering, of how that it's all based on such good intentions and good efforts. It's nice. One thing that can come up, I've been wanting to talk about this anyway for a while, but one thing that can come up when we're all together is this tendency we might have to compare. I'd like to invite you to think about how comparing comes up in your own life or your own habits, conditioning, because really the whole setup here in samsara is that we're evaluating all the time, comparing one thing with another, and all of language is really about comparison. And we need that ability in order to survive, to know what's good, what's not good, like what's good to eat and what's not good to eat, or we're constantly comparing things. There's the good and the bad, and the beautiful and the not beautiful, and the dangerous, and like we're comparing, you see a snake and you're identifying it, and so on, because we have to be safe. But then we also compare ourselves to other people. This is the very common activity of the mind. And this is how this is a lot of how we form our sense of self, our idea of who we are. We take on the come on in. We take on the evaluation that's been reflected back to us a lot of times from the people around us as we grow up. And we continue to compare ourselves to others to kind of see if we're okay or not. Welcome. I was just talking about comparing ourselves to others and comparing things in general. So I want you to reflect a little bit, just take a couple of minutes to maybe something comes up right away in your own experience, in the habits or the conditioning that you've been given, and just notice how that comparison, affects you, what it is, what are the conclusions we come to about ourselves or maybe about someone else we know. And one of the things that we often may do without realizing it is think that whatever that evaluation is we have of ourselves or someone else, that it's permanent. We get an idea about someone and we think that that's how they are. It's just how they are. And maybe they're not that way the next time, or maybe they change. Or maybe we have that image of them, and so when we interact, that's what we perceive, when actually maybe it's not as strong as we think. One of the hurtful things that sometimes people say to each other is that, oh, you're just like that, you're like that, you're being yourself again, in some way that they're disparaging, of course. And that bringing things up from the past about how we've seen someone can really be painful. When Ajahn Ganha talks about like doing work just for the sake of work, I think a lot of what drops away is that comparing. Am I doing it right? Am I doing as good a job as the other people I see around me? You know, what are people going to think? All of those kinds of thoughts come along with this idea of, checking to see if we're okay. Like I said, it's so completely understandable that we develop this as we live in the world. But we can start to notice as practitioners how much it limits us, and also how invalid it might be. And what is it like to set that aside and really just be in touch with our own good intentions, be in touch with the Dhamma and act from that place. So as we develop on the path, this evaluation, this comparing makes is less and less important. And there's a sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya where these two monks come to the Buddha and hold on a second, I'm going to bring it up. I had it up, but it has somehow disappeared. It's in the suttas, in the numerical discourses, in the Book of Sixes. I think it's 49. It's called With Kema. It's actually one of the monks was named Kema and the other one Sumana. And Kema is a really lovely Pali word. It means sanctuary or safety. When we have thoughts of Kema, it's the wanting safety and security for everyone, for others. So these two monks came to see the Buddha and they bowed, they sat down to one side, and then one of them, was Kema, who went up to the Buddha and he said, when a mendicant who is perfected, with defilements ended, who has completed the spiritual journey, done what had to be done, laid down the burden, achieved their heart's goal, utterly ended the fetter of continued existence, and is rightly freed through enlightenment, they do not think there is someone better than me, or equal to me, or worse than me. That was what he said, and the teacher approved. And then Kema, knowing that the teacher approved, rose from his seat, bowed, respectfully circled the Buddha, keeping him on his right, and left. And then after a little while, Sumana said to the Buddha, a mendicant who is perfected, with defilements ended, who has completed the spiritual journey, done what had to be done, laid down the burden, achieved their heart's goal, utterly ended the fetter of continued existence, and is rightly freed through enlightenment, does not think there is no one better than me, or equal to me, or worse than me. And just like with Kema, the teacher approved, and then Sumana, knowing that the teacher approved, got up, bowed, and respectfully circled the Buddha, keeping him on his right side, and left. And after that, the Buddha said to the other mendicants, this is how one declares enlightenment. The goal is spoken of, but the self is not involved. But it seems that there are some people who declare enlightenment as a joke. So he's talking to the monks who's obviously not really being serious about it. He said those who are enlightened don't represent themselves as being superior, inferior, or equal. Rebirth is ended. The spiritual journey has been completed. They live freed from the fetters. I had to read this a couple times to see the difference between what Kema said and what Sumana said. So this idea that there's no thought of there's someone better than me, equal to me, or worse than me. And there's no thought, no one is better than me, equal to me, or worse than me. It really covers both directions. Um, there is someone better than me, equal to me, or worse than me, or there is no one better than me, or equal to me, or worse than me. And so it's like, and that's how it got into the Book of Sixes. And it's what I want to, what I hope to point out is that this is something we can really look at ourselves. We can practice it. Um, we can recognize when we're comparing, and we can let it go. That what are we really comparing? You know, we're comparing conditioning. We're comparing the packaging, the khandhas. And even though the world is so deeply based in this, when we see through it, it's a tremendous relief. You know, we don't have to follow along in this idea of always kind of placing someone in some kind of hierarchy. I remember my mom talking about this when I was a child. It's really interesting thinking back about her, the different things she would say, and she was actually pretty philosophical for this very, you know, farm girl, uneducated person. Um, she was very wise, and she said, "Why is it that I always kind of place people in an order of like on some kind of ladder? Like, you know, we lived in this town of 2,500 people. She knew almost everybody. I was impressed that she told me once that she worked at the polls, and everyone who came through the door she could greet by their first name. I mean, that's knowing your neighbors. And yet, and this question of like, why do I think this person is above others, and this person is, you know, and then she was always worried about herself too, like, where am I? She always thought of herself kind of lower on the ladder, which I think was pretty sad in some ways for her. And I also remember once one of those people that she thought was kind of high up on the ladder passed away, and she said, I never thought she'd die. You know, like, what are we doing when we, you know, think we've set people um, in some ideal position, maybe have some kind of idealism. So what's the value of not doing that? And being able to be present in the moment with what's in front of us, with who's in front of us, seeing them as they are now. It's really kind. It's respectful. At least that's how I see it, how I experience it. And as a parent, I really felt it was important to be able to see my children as they are, especially as they're growing up in their teens and coming into adulthood. Um, really see them how they are and recognize, well, now it's more obvious than ever for me, but we're not these khandhas, and we're not this conditioning that the world might be evaluating and comparing. And when we do that to ourselves, whether we place ourselves above others or lower than others or even equal to others, we're evaluating the wrong things. I feel like what we can lean into is really seeing the Dhamma in each other, seeing, how the Dhamma is part of the situation we're in, and part of it, it is the foundation and can be the focus. So even when people are acting unskillfully, recognizing there are causes and conditions for that. Even when we are acting unskillfully, there are causes and conditions for that. How can I bring that more into harmony with the Dhamma? Bring that in tune with the Dhamma. And recognize the benefits of that. Because that's our real nature. So when we work together, besides being aware of where the other people are around us, we can be aware of our thoughts. If we worry about how we're doing, maybe we can let that go. We can learn from each other as we watch someone else. Even if they're much younger than us or much older than us, whatever it is, we'll let go of our preconceptions and be open. See the goodness in each other and really emphasize that. And it's not like we go, want to go blind to what's not wholesome, definitely, but we want to be able to recognize the impermanent nature of it and how it can be changed. So that's about what I had to say today, I think. I'd love to hear any examples or comments or questions you might have about that. Yeah, Deborah?
So it seems like there's a lot of categories, right? Can you hear her?
You want to come up a little closer?
I can't. So it seems like there's a lot of categories, right? Like in comparison, I was surprised that the equal to was included also, because then you're not really, I guess what I'm getting from this is that the categories don't really matter, like who's richer, or who's poorer, who's in better health, who's stronger, who's prettier, who's whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, but there's something that you're looking at in the other person. What is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Some basic nature, I guess. So Buddha nature. A lot of
Yeah. So you're wondering, what do we see in people if we don't see these better, worse, things? I think it is that we see the goodness of their heart.
and not to compare yourself to that goodness.
And not to compare yourself to that goodness, and just really appreciating it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we have the idea that someone doesn't have goodness in the heart, but they do. And when you dig into the story, you realize that when people show up as grumpy or inconsiderate or mean or deceitful or stingy or whatever it might be, that there are reasons for that. And you want to, know them. Like Ajahn Chah said, you have to know the animals in the forest. You don't treat the rabbit the same way you treat the rattlesnake. But you still have an appreciation for the rattlesnake. in its own appropriate way, you know.
So it kind of goes with right speech.
It kind of goes with right speech. You're saying, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking of, so I had this experience recently, you know, my mother dying, and then being in Rhode Island and being with my family and thinking like, oh, that person's really horrible to be with, or that person's really whatever. And oh, I'm so nice.
Can you hear it, Deborah? Not really. Okay.
Okay, so I had this experience. My mother died, and I was in Rhode Island at the funeral and with my family. And then there was a lot of comparison, like, oh, that one's really stingy, or that one's really a pain in the butt, or that one's really easy to get along with, or, you know, there's so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wrote a letter to my sister, which was really negative, like, oh, you blah, 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 you know, complaining about her. And then my daughter put it through her beautiful communications and became a very loving and kind. Like, but I didn't want to send, but I sent that, and that had a really good effect.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I'm this stimulating a lot of thoughts, this whole idea.
Yeah, and what would it be like to just be with people the way they are and not compare?
Yeah.
Can we do it?
Can we do that? I don't know.
You know, not
If they're
compare ourselves, not compare
if they're
to
like
each other.
yourself, if they're like yourself, right, then it's easy. But if they have different ideas, or they're different political persuasion or something, or whatever, then there's a lot of comparison.
I remember my family saying, like, yeah, of all the brother-in-laws, I like that one the best, you know, this kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
You know, just, I don't know if this is my greatest microphone, but I don't know. Could you hear me just a second ago? Oh, you could. Okay. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Kimberly?
Ayya, could you please talk more about not comparing each other even as equals?
When awakening occurs, the understanding that all sankharas are impermanent causes the complete letting go of all of it. And then even equal is just another worthless comparison. It doesn't even come to the mind like that, like Kema and Sumana were saying, because you don't see the world in those terms anymore. Someone at that point, they know what's wholesome and unwholesome. They know if someone's doing something that's going to be painful for them and other people, but they're not putting them in this box because they recognize how all these processes work. They're just processes. When we're comparing even equal, it comes from the place of self. It comes from the place of the belief in this living being, belief in this packaging as being the reality. So that experience changes everything, changes the way you see others, the way you see this particular packaging that they're in, you might say. It's all going to get recycled, you know. It's just not this lasting entity that we hold it to be. And then you begin to see how the painful situations come up in those comparisons. how is it that we can really love everyone equally? And we've to see that all these things we usually are evaluating, attracted to, put off by, just processes. Does that make sense, Kimberly?
Yes. Thank you, Ayya.
Yeah, you're welcome. Holly?
Hi, Ayya. It's good to be here with all of you. Um, so I really like the talk that was just posted on death. So thank you. That was awesome. And when you're talking about comparing mind, I have this friend who recently lost her husband,
Mm.
and we visit from time to time, and I find it rather exhausting at this point. And this, like a comparing mind is one way to talk about some of what I feel when I'm with her, listening to her prattle on
Mhm.
about her process and her graduate level course on studying the effects of grieving for herself, and and so I'm comparing. I'm going, well, why is this person like me, like I am today, not like I am the year after I lost my mother. I knew then that I was off kilter, off track socially,
Mhm.
swinging around with the emotions, and I was just hoping my friends would just kind of hang on. And so then I look at this friend of mine and I go, I need to hang on to the friendship.
Mhm.
That's a piece of who I want to be. Um, so it's really interesting to see that. Yes, as soon as you started talking about comparing mine, I'm like, yeah, I'm going, well, I'm so relatively still and quiet inside, and she's just a tangle up of stuff, and it's like that's so unhelpful. And so your phrasing, placing us on a ladder, it's like, well, I already went through. Her parents were absent in her childhood, so I already lost a person I really loved, and I've been through this. And oh, Jesus, this
Mhm.
ladder. Where am I on the ladder? It's just I can just see it, like so not helpful. So I loved you saying that what we can learn is seeing the Dhamma in each other. And so when I considered that, I thought, but when she's acting unskillfully, how can I bring us into harmony with the Dhamma? And that's for me to do. Duh. So that was where my journey took me, and I thought, well, I just would like, as I wish others to accept me during that time, I would like to have it in myself to totally accept her and just say, this is like this. And as you pointed out, she will change, and I changed, and we're all changing. So not to go, it's helpful to go, oh, this is kind of hard to listen to an hour and a half of this. I just want to get away. It's really helpful to go, it's just right now. It was like that for me. I'm sure people wanted to get away from me.
Mhm.
And then I thought, well, then it's compassion. Here we go, right? It's compassion for her, it's loving kindness for her and me, and loving kindness for myself in the situation, loving kindness for her. It's equanimity in the social situation, in my relationship with her as a friend. And it's mudita, because when I said, what can I give to you after the death of her husband? She said, talk to me about the Dhamma.
Yeah, beautiful.
So that is my story for
Yeah.
today. Thank you for causing me to fill 2 pages in my journal as you talked with thought,
Okay,
personal experiences.
good.
Any comments you have would be loved.
Yeah. Well, one thing that came to mind for me is in my experience listening to people that talk on and on about something and it's hard to stay with it, is the strengthening of our mindfulness. So in that moment, really being present, I would watch my breath as I was listening, and I could really stay with it and care about what they're saying, um, and just really deepening that mindfulness in that moment really helps. And mindfulness, really, true mindfulness is Dhamma. It's the same thing. And so to be able to have that grounding in the Dhamma at those times. And the other thing that I flashed on when you were talking, because you were describing coming into the Dhamma yourself, doing that for yourself, and seeing in the other person the impermanence of the situation that the processing they're going through. And even though your friend asks to hear the Dhamma, making sure that we're not trying to get them to be in a different place. And I know that you're going to be, watching for that invitation or asking if that's what they'd like, that kind of thing, and respecting and allowing, because so often, because of our own discomfort or pain that comes up when other people are talking about what's painful for them or they're in pain, we want them to get over it because we don't want to feel this way. And we all know this, but it can be tempting. And like I said, Holly,
It's
I'm not,
respect for the friend, right?
yeah.
I was to say, well, when I was there, here's what I did, or here's what it would
Mm,
devalue where she is right now, today.
hmm
And in
yeah,
loving her in a friendship, I have to rise above that, and I have to really say where she's at is really special.
yeah. And, we have to sometimes take a chance, and maybe there's a time when someone is going through something like maybe with a different kind of situation, not necessarily with grief, but with anger or grumpiness or resentment or whatever, like knowing when to skillfully help them see where they're at, like reflecting on that. But we want to do that in a very respectful way. Yeah. It's so valuable to gain the skill to be present with what we're feeling, what we're thinking, and to be present with what they're going through and how that seems over there. That other looks like a separate process. But when we do that, then we don't have to be reacting to them based on our experience. We can be taking care of that in ourselves.
You said looks like a special process, looks like a separate process. That is a great phrase because really it isn't, right? It's the process of shared humanity. Could you speak just a bit on that? That would be really helpful.
I mean, I'm going to refer to Ajahn Sumedho here because I think he says it really clearly. We show up as apparently individual separate selves here, but there's no core to them, to that. But really, in Nibbana is unitive. There's no like separate processes. So where do these individual processes, seemingly processes, come from? It's coming from that underlayment, that ground of being, which is Dhamma, which is, unitive. And all of these processes are related. So we think we're separate, but we're not. Other thoughts? I'm really impressed that y'all came early enough to come to the program from pretty far away. Yeah. Here you go.
Hi, this is Amy. This is really coming up. This is just a wonderful focus on something that I've noticed coming up a lot. I was noticing it coming up just so obviously in the swim lane when I went to the pool, where everyone's either swimming too slow or too fast. And then resentment would arise. And then I was thinking about the sutta that was shared about self-effacement and how I could bring non-resentment. And then it was just like, oh, just like me, these people are dealing with sickness, aging, and death, and fears about the body and an attempt to be healthy, and how it's such a different way to relate to, these bodies as being. And of course, when I was having like a feeling of superiority about being faster than other people, then when other people were faster than me, there would be this painful sort of self-attack around that. And then even the equal thing would be a trap that would eventually get me. And then I was just thinking right now about how, all this such a thing that comes up in the mind with these like list making, and how when I was like a kid in school, there were all these lists, and I would be like at the top of one list and in the middle of one list and the bottom of one list, and how I can see the way like I constructed a self in that early part of life was around the lists where I was at the top of the list. And the list where I was in the middle of the list, there wasn't as much maybe attention there or self-making, and how like just seeing how that sort of karma is played out across my life. And it was just the randomness of that particular list, and is really just the selfing process really illustrated. Any thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Amy. I'm just thinking about a classroom without lists, without the grades being published for everybody to know, and without the someone's better than me, someone's worse than me, someone's equal to me. Wow. Yeah, thank you. I loved the part, I loved all the what you said, but I was really internally, I felt the shift when you went from resentment to non-resentment. It's like even bringing it up in the mind, and you're like, oh, I mean, that must have been a relief that, it's like, oh, I remember it was a long time ago now, being in a lot of traffic and thinking, well, our goal here is that everyone gets to where they're going safely. And then I started seeing us all there on the highway as a team. And it almost felt like it got choreographed, who's changing lanes and how we give them space. And it's a whole different way of being in that situation. Marilyn?
Is it different though when we're talking about the Dhamma? Because don't we hear people coming to the Buddha and asking, what happened to them when they died? Were they arahants? And there's this sort of comparison about, is this a once returner, or is that, there's that kind of discussion. And it seems to me it can be encouraging to think that these people in this discussion they're ahead of me. If they can be ahead of me, I can catch up. There's hope for me by making that comparison. Is there? I mean,
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I want to make a couple of points about that. It is valuable to see when someone is skilled in some way that we would like to be more skilled. And the Buddha, this is kind of related. He'll say, if you know someone who has more wisdom than you have, then emulate that, learn from it. If you know someone who has more faith than you have, emulate that, follow that. Generosity. You can name other qualities, virtue. I think when that's done in a productive way, it's not really thinking of this person is better than me. It's really just seeing that quality and how beautiful and rich it is, and then, taking that in and developing ourselves. So it's true that there's discernment around, things like that. But we don't have to kind of place someone above us or below us. We don't have to be doing that. And I think, as you rightly brought up, these ideas of someone being a stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, arahant, you'll notice that only gets discussed after the person dies. So like at that point of death, they were kind of in that phase of development, and they're going to be able to take that into the next existence. But when we talk about where am I on the path, or where is someone else on the path, most of the time that's coming from the sense of self. And the sense of self is doing that comparing. And that all becomes irrelevant with awakening. So, like Ajahn Chah wouldn't talk about somebody being an arahant. He would talk about someone being a good monk. They're a good monk. Or, the Kruba Ajahns, I think that's a more skillful way of talking about that. But of course, sometimes, the understanding, belief, or reputation of someone having finished the work, it is inspiring. We do have more confidence in them. We want to listen to them. But we should always, anyway, even if that reputation is there, be aware of whether what we're hearing really is in alignment with the Dhamma or not. You don't trust everything they say, because at the moment that they're saying it, it may not actually be, what I want to say, coming from the Dhamma. It might be coming from the personality. They still have that personality, even though, they're not attached to it or owning it. I don't know if I ever told you this story. Ajahn Jayasaro told us a story once about this monk that was known to be enlightened, and there was a family that had a great amount of faith in him, and made offerings and visited often. He was one of the local people, or one of the local families. And the father in this family, whose son was already grown and married, and he was visiting this monk, and the monk said, "So, have they had any children yet?" And the father said no. And the monk said, "Well, he should get a new wife." And the father went back and told the family this, and the daughter-in-law felt terrible, and she felt like, oh, should I leave? Am I in the way of, this not happening? And there was this whole horrible thing. And the father went back to the monk and talked to him, and he said, "I was just joking. I didn't mean that to be taken seriously." Maybe for me as a Westerner, it's a little hard to imagine that way of speaking, but it's still like, we need to be discerning without that pigeonholing of ourselves or others into that slot. And still, you know, even when we really trust someone's awakened, you know, be discerning. And Ajahn Sumedho gave a talk where he talked about, you know, someone asking him, when did you become a stream enterer? Or, you know, people ask, you know, like whether he's an arahant or not. And he's like, what becomes an arahant? This body, it just gets old and dies. It's not an arahant. The personality doesn't become an arahant. So it's like we want to see these things through the lens of the Dhamma, as you said, to be inspired when we see how this development unfolds, but to not to try to resist this kind of continual impulse to place people. And you know, you can know someone's got a lot of skill and want to emulate that and follow it and trust them without it being personal. I think that's the way I want to say it. Yeah, Marilyn.
This is kind of also related to the tendency these days to pathologize people. This person is a certain disease or condition. This person is that condition. And
Yeah.
it's a, what do you call it? Pigeonholing them, putting them in a box and just setting them aside. It's kind of not a good tendency.
Yeah. My friend sent me something about ADHD. And when they look deeply into it, some of the people looking deeply into it recognize that these characteristics, even though they don't match well with the kind of social systems we've created, like education, where everybody has to sit in a seat for a long time and be focused on one thing, but that these characteristics actually were really, really helpful back in the time when human beings were developing as hunter-gatherers and noticing all different kinds of things and noticing a lot of the dangers that happen. And that was a real plus, the kind of characteristics. So, you know, yeah, we label certain things as inferior when they're not really inferior. And we can go through our whole life feeling inferior when we're not inferior. Even with a good heart, even with all of our, you know, good actions, we still might think of ourselves as inferior. And it's really a product of the sense of self and this tendency these individual selves have of comparing and wanting to place ourselves above, below, or equal. You know, the same with others. Yeah. There you go.
Hi there, this is Bien. This week I went through some particularly specific health things, and I found that when I was going through those, that I had a lot of negative self-talk, and I was aware of it, and I was not only comparing myself to others who were more able-bodied, but I was also comparing myself to myself when I'm more able-bodied. And I ended up I'm reading The Sound of Silence by Ajahn Sumedho.
Mm-hmm.
and found it really helpful. I came across this specific piece of writing in the book where he was talking about the thinking mind and how there's pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral thoughts. And he was specifically talking about, the pleasant thoughts being, I'm a good person, the unpleasant thoughts being, I'm a bad person. And that one way that he started working with that was, instead of seeing one of those two things, he started seeing, I am a human being, when he would notice that he was in one of those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And that really settled with me in this place this week. And I started doing that on a regular basis when I would notice that was happening. And it offered me a lot of solace in those moments. And hearing this discussion today prompted me to take it a step further and then offer that outwards as well to others around when I find that I might be feeling superior or inferior, that we're all just human beings, and have that be neutral. So
Thank you, Deanne. Yeah, thank you. And you reminded me of the places in the suttas where the Buddha talks about, as a sense of self, through the sense of self, we think about what was I in the past, what will I be in the future, and how when we see with the Dhamma, all of that falls away. Like even thinking, having memories come up about things that we've done in the past or things that have happened in the past, it just appears as, well, Ajahn Smito describes it as phantoms that just come and go, or that was someone else. That was this other process going on, that earlier on, recognizing that it's not a self, it's not something to cling to. One of the passages about this is in Majjhima Nikaya number 2. Let me go find it a second. Is the all the taints is what it's called, and it talks about the different ways in which we let go of our defilements. And I'm going to look at the Gabodi's version here. Taints to be abandoned by seeing. He contrasts the untaught ordinary person with the noble disciple. And the untaught ordinary person will attend to things that are unfit for attention. And this is kind of that comparing, and that, what was I in the past? How was I in the past? This kind of comparing yourself, like Bian was saying, to, before. I can, at age 72, I can think of things that I could do before that I'm not doing anymore, like how long and hard I could work, or whatever. Or, some body part starts to weaken, and then you can't, drink coffee anymore, or you can't eat sugar anymore, or whatever it might be, right? And then they unwisely think about the self, or they think about unwisely thinking about the future, wanting to be this way or that way, worrying about what will happen in the future. And then also these views of the self and how we hold on to it. And when it comes to the And then it comes to the noble disciple saying that the noble disciple doesn't think this way. Instead, the noble disciple thinks this is suffering. And we attend to that suffering wisely, being present with what we experience. And this is the origin, and this is the cessation, and this is the path leading to the cessation. And then the Buddha said the result of this wise attention is that we abandon the personality view, any doubt we have in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and this social and cultural conditioning that we have. We don't have to follow anymore all of the ways in which we've been conditioned. We can see it and we can decide, well, what's useful in this and what isn't. So one of the traps is that we compare and then we say, oh no, I'm comparing again. And we're still stuck in that sense of self and comparing ourselves to when we're not comparing. It's like, okay, just being present with that and feeling how it feels, being present with the dukkha of it and letting go of the grasping, the clinging. Because even if we fully awaken, the personality is still going to be there. It's still going to have its processes, but we don't have to cling to them. We don't have to cling to what we were in the past or what we might be in the future or what's happening right now. Everything the Buddha taught was about suffering and letting go of suffering, putting an end to it. And it works as we go along. It's very encouraging. Whether we're swimming at the pool or dealing with our health changes or driving on the road or whatever it is, we can feel the immediate relief when we recognize, oh, looking at it this way is dukkha, and I don't have to look at it this way. I'm thinking right now about what it's like to lose your partner, whether it's death or some other way. I've been through that a number of times. And the comparing there might be comparing, whether they behaved better or worse than I did. We might compare what it was like to be together and now what it's like to be alone. If we can set that aside, not to oppress what's there, not to try to suppress it, not oppress, suppress it, not suppress it, but to be present with the feelings and let go of the thinking. I mean, sometimes we need to listen to our mind too, but not from a place of grasping and holding on. And then recognizing that being here in this moment with these conditions, looking at what is wholesome, what is good, what is beneficial, what is in alignment with Dhamma, and what isn't, and moving in the direction of Dhamma, allowing the Dhamma to work through us in this present moment. That's what's going to bring us happiness. Yes.
Question.
Deborah's got a question.
So it seems that what we say we want is also based on conditioning. So I'm just wondering, is there like a bodily checklist? Like, oh, my shoulders are relaxed, my feet are comfortable, my breathing is free. Like, is that brings you to that, when you're feeling like all constricted, judgmental, comparing.
It sounds like a great approach.
Yeah, do you have
Especially
one?
for someone who's a body worker.
Right. I mean, that's what I do. And I love, like, Ajahn Brahm, he talks about that, like, that's what I run through my body first. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any suggestions for that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good approach. And it depends on each of us how we want to do things or how we operate. But for me, certainly with meditation, even in Anapanasati, you see the Buddha first looking at the body, in mindfulness in the four foundations of mindfulness, first working with the body. So noticing in our body what we're holding. And also, when we work with feeling, emotions, noticing where we notice them in the body is extremely helpful, very important for being able to step back away from them and see them as they are. So I think this is an excellent suggestion from Deborah. It's like, how am I holding my body? Can I relax? Can I be with what I'm feeling? Can I notice the way my body changes when I have a thought? I remember Ajahn Jeff one time saying every thought causes some muscle in your body to tense up. It's very interesting to notice. So yeah, when we're practicing, we have the solitude and the time to ourselves to practice, we can really pay attention to these things. And then when we're in the moment where we're interacting with someone, we can be more aware and just take a breath. Let the system relax. Yeah. When Ajahn Mahabua talked about his awakening experience, one of the things he mentions is that he never got over his fear of tigers. And he was really revered as an incredible awakened being. And he, I think it's just testimony that, the personality is still going to be there and the body is still going to react to things. But we can observe that. We don't have to grasp it. And all this work, or all this play, whatever you want to call it, of noticing, oh, now my mind is comparing. Oh, what if I set that down? What do I see when that structure gets set aside? What do I see in this situation? How do I want to be with this? And what do I see in myself when I'm not placing myself in this ladder, in this hierarchy? And then to, notice that turning to the Dhamma is really right here in this moment, anytime, you know, setting aside the sense of self and being with the Dhamma, immediately available, inviting us to investigate. That this idea of awakening can seem really far away, but maybe not. Yes, Holly.
I really liked Marilyn's comment about seeing venerated teachers of the truth of the Dhamma and how they live their life as comparing. And I'm also reading Ajahn Sona's book on gardening, which is on right effort.
Mm.
And it's made me think about having teachers that are excellent is inspiring, and that one can be inspired without ranking.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives me it supports me in my appropriate effort along the path, I think. Your comments?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I feel so grateful, so grateful to so many of the teachers that I've encountered. Most of them disciples of Ajahn Chah, but not all of them. Some of them, obviously, some of them from other contexts, and also the Dhamma Youth Order. And it would just be fruitless and kind of silly to rank them. You know, it's like they've shown up in my life at different times and with different kinds of gifts. And we can think that way about the people in our life. My parents weren't arahants, but they were really good people who had their own problems. But to really see what we can be inspired by in the people around us and appreciate, I mean, it helps us and it helps them. You know, this comparing is so pervasive in our experience as human beings. Another thing I remember my mom talking about is she really didn't like competition, contests where you have a winner and you have a loser or maybe many losers. You know, why set it up like that? Yeah, we don't have to. There are other ways. And of course, sometimes competition really helps us strive and break through what we thought were our limits. So it's not all bad. This is samsara. There's the good and bad in everything. How are we going to take it? And what are we going to do with it? I think that's really the question.
Um, I've been thinking a lot about how I do a lot of comparison, just a lot of externally outward focused assessment and evaluation of my life. And I do that as a way to distract myself and avoid just attuning inward and just assessing, am I enjoying this? Does this feel right to me? And instead looking for outside verification or orientation. And um, and I think about how in our culture we really nail it into our children that that's how to live. Especially in our educational system, just that so little of how we teach children anything in our culture is done from this place of like inward attunement, feeling prepared, feeling satisfied, feeling competent. It's all about tests.
Mhm.
Everything is evaluated through tests. And yeah, I'm thinking about how that's really persisted into my just general behavior. And attuning inward really dissolves the discomfort and the tension of like what is right and what is wrong, but rather just noticing what is. And um, it's so much more neutral and peaceful. But it's a foreign orientation to me. I feel like I'm really learning it
Mhm.
for the first time. And that, yeah, the previous sort of compulsion to compare is really from this place of feeling lost
Mhm.
and thinking that I'm going to find an answer and find solace by sort of orienting myself within the constellation around me rather than just attuning to what's happening within me.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, this human existence is full of contradictions. And of course, we have to be aware of, how we're operating within among the people we're with. But when that comes from that inner attunement, it's going to be a lot easier, a lot more um, intuitive and connected. And if we base our view of ourselves on what we think other people think of us, uh, it's really a mess because that is not stable. The real point here is that nothing in this world is stable. And where does the world end? It ends by internally connecting with the Dhamma and following Dhamma, letting go of attachment to all sankharas, to all activities, to all desires and aversions. It's really freeing. And thank you for those comments and questions. Anyone, one last piece of input here? Okay, so I want to end by saying that certain kinds of evaluation, as I mentioned before, are very important. You know, knowing the animals of the forest, being tuned in to what's happening with others, as well as being tuned in to what's happening internally, and caring about each other. And knowing that this is just process, it's constantly changing. And knowing that we can let go of everything. And to whatever degree you can practice that, you know, having time by yourself and really noticing what you're clinging to. We always can tell because that's where the suffering is. And then, even for a few minutes, to set it down, to really relax and let go into the present moment, into the Dhamma. Start to really get a taste for that, into the silence. Start to prefer the silence over the noise. See what that feels like. And remember that, you know, awakening is really, I've heard some people say it's your birthright. We come into human existence and we have this opportunity. And we've met up with the teachings that are clear and well expounded. We have such an opportunity. We have each other to talk to rely on, to emulate one another's good qualities. Such an opportunity. Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Take good care. Enjoy the practice.